All right, so by this point, you really are a part of the session musician community in Nashville. You've helped this instrument to break through as part of the sound of what was going on. You'd been Joey Miskulin polka prodigy and Joey Miskulin session accordion maestro. How did you become Joey the Cow-Polka king?
One of the greatest days of my life. How many of you remember Vic Willis? You remember the Vic Willis and the Willis brothers? Great, right? So Vic was an accordion player too, and when I came to town, he was so kind to me, and I transferred into this local union. And Vic and his brothers were no longer with him at that point. It was Vic and Lorna Greenwood was a girl, and also Kathy Shepard. That was the trio. And there was a benefit at the Station Inn. It was something like Make-A-Wish, you know, Peter, where they were raising money to allow kids to whatever their wish was, to allow it to happen. So anyway, he said, would you and Cowboy play with us? And yeah, of course. So we came there and we played. And also on that same stage, we doubled with Dickie Lee. So Dickie Lee was there with his band, and there was some guy who was just great, some charismatic guy with a baseball cap, and he was dancing around and doing things, and it was just great, and you couldn't take your eyes off him, you know? So anyway, the show is over. Everyone's great. We raised money for the kids, and I'm walking out, and this fella says to me, he's sitting at the bar with his then girlfriend. She would become his wife, and Roberta, and he said, hey, I'm too slim. He said, you're the Joey that played with Frankie Yankovic. And I said, yeah. And I said, are you the Too Slim with Riders in the Sky? He said, yeah. That's how we met. We had a common friend. He's 6'7". He lives in Escanaba, Michigan. His name is Jay Broderson, and he was sending me Riders tapes and sending Riders my tapes. So that was great, and I met Slim, and it was wonderful. Man, it's good to finally meet you, and vice versa, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't long after that I got a telephone call from Woody. And Woody said, Sly, so we're going to make a recording here. We got this little radio show called Riders Radio Theater, and I want you to play on this record with us, too. You know, we know a lot about you. We've heard your tapes and stuff, and okay, so can you do it? And I said, sure. He said, and don't forget to bring your sound effects. And I went, what? What are you talking about? Later on, I found out that's not an odd question for Woody to say. You know, anything he has is good. So anyway, I showed up at the recording studio, and I walk in, and Ranger Doug, by this time, had put up with a lot of Woody's people that he brought on the road or whatever, you know, and he's reading the paper, and I say, Woody said, that's Ranger Doug over there. And I said, hello, Ranger Doug. And he went, hello, nice to meet you. Back to his paper, and that was it. So then I met Slim again at the studio, and I'm so fortunate because I came to Nashville because I was tired of being on the road. I'd been on the road already for 25 years by the time I came down here. And although when I talk about the Yankovic Band, when I started playing with Frank, it was so great. The musicians were just at the top of their game. They were wonderful. As time went on, Frank got older, and he started, oh gosh, how can I say this without being demeaning? I don't mean this in any bad way. But the musicians that played when I started with him were very seasoned. They could play anything. They could play any style of music. They were truly, truly professional. Later on, Frank would have to hire polka musicians, guys that played polkas, but that was about the extent of their ability. And they were great people. I loved them all. They played polkas and waltzes, just really wonderful. But I got a little bit tired of shaking hands with a new guy every week, you know. And so I decided to move to Nashville. As you know that story, and Patty and the family moved down. So I didn't want to be on the road anymore. I'd had it. That was it. I was producing. I was working with Johnny Cash. By that time, I was working with Emmylou Harris, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Glenn Campbell, and on and on and on it went. And it was great. So after the recording session with the Riders, I got a call from Too Slim, and he said, hey, would you like to be a guest on Riders Radio Theater? And that's the first album I cut with them on MCA. It was called Riders Radio Theater, kind of a kickoff to their radio show. And that's where Slim, I guess it was Slim and maybe Texas Big Spender that called me Joey the Cow-Polka King. That's the album that Joey the Cow-Polka King was born on. And so I started doing the radio show, And it was so much fun. It was fun to work with guys that were, oh God, I don't mean this in any way against anyone I ever played with, but fun to play with guys where you didn't have to worry about radio records. You didn't have to play the same song the same way. You could do whatever you wanted to do with it. The first song that we played was Lady Be Good. I thought, how cool is this to be able to play Lady Be Good, you know, and have people love it? It's like introducing all these songs again. And I loved it. And then they asked me, would you want to be on next week too? Absolutely, because it was fun. I discovered the fun of playing music. That's why they call it playing music. You don't work music, you play because it's fun. And I had fun with these guys. There was a connection, and it was the best. You know, I'd never worked with a guitar player like Ranger Doug. Too Slim is one of the greatest bass players I ever worked with, and Woody Paul is on a planet of his own, and I love him, you know? And it was great. And next thing you know, Woody said, would you like to go on the road? And so I think it was 30 years ago in this year was the first road date. They flew me to Washington, D.C. Slim's girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, Roberta, picked me up in the old Riders bus, and we did the first road show at the Birchmere. And I never looked back. It was great. It was wonderful. There was a little hiccup because there was a manager that I was not fond of, and so I split for a little bit, and then he became fond of me, and I became then fond of him, and and I came back, and I've been back ever since. And that is, whenever my career will end, it'll end after having played with these guys, because they are the best. I never had brothers or sisters when I grew up, and they are the best of the best as far as people and as far as music.
Let's see, we've got a